Sallyann, thank you so much for taking the time to go through more about what the organization is working on. Love to hear more about GLEAC. And you are a chief identity hacker. That's quote unquote. That's what I've seen out there. Could you give me a little bit of background about what you're working on and where you came from that led you in this direction?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Joseph. An absolute pleasure. So I'll address the title issue since everyone always brings that up. So often when we hear the word hacker, we automatically assume it's something bad, right?
Right.
When you think about what hacking does, it goes below the surface. And the body of work of GLEAC is about signaling our human wisdom and ingenuity, and that's below the surface of all the things that we show as ornaments of who we are. So if I go to everyone's LinkedIn profile or their Wikipedia, I see these ornaments, but true wisdom and ingenuity sometimes can come from people who don't have those ornaments. So identity hacking is being able to go below that surface and to be able to signal that.
Fantastic. Makes a lot of
Yeah. So
sense.
so now that I've explained it to you, you're like, oh, you're the good kind of hacker. I'm like, yeah, I'm
That's right.
in terms of the body of work and what GLEAC does and our entry into the Web3 space. So GLEAC co-pilots your learning, your problem solving, and your innovation with 500 plus of the world's leading industry experts, right? If I were to say to you, do you want to learn alone? Or if I gave you the best who has been there and done that, or being there and doing that as they speak to help you do it, we'll all raise our hand and go, I want to be in that room.
I'll take the latter. Yes.
Right. And in terms of our how does a business take its core kind of web 2 product and enter into that web 3 space? And I think this is something that every business, right? I think if you are not living under a rock, every business should be asking this question, because all of these emerging technologies in this space, whether it is web 3, whether it is green skills, whether it is data and AI. I think if you're not asking yourself, how does chat GPT, impact my business today, you're living under a rock. It's how
So
do I
true.
take that and how do I, you're not changing your business model, but how do I take baby steps into that space with my core offering? And maybe that unlocks another market for you. Maybe that unlocks innovation within your product. So if I look at the GLEAC core product, it's human ingenuity, collective wisdom of the world's leading experts. And if I think about what are some of the things I would want to preserve and tokenize of our existence, really, human ingenuity, identity is one of the biggest things, right? That I would want to capture. When you think of, I always explain blockchain as the perfect notebook. You can't really cancel anything out or rip any pages out. Well, how humans think, and particularly the world's smartest humans, that's something I would want to capture and tokenize on blockchain. So using NFT technology, we brought out in October the world's first NFTs. It's a utility NFT of 5 hours with the world's leading experts in 4 verticals: AI and data, sustainability, Web3, and we have a wildcard section, which, we have like some, absolutely interesting individuals. So that's how the project was born, Joseph, of really, I think any business owner going, how do I step and go into that space without completely changing what I do as a business?
Fantastic. So this is very, very innovative. I've heard one or two groups work on this, like in the legal side, where they're like saying, okay, if you'd like to connect with an attorney, you can use an hour or 2 hours of their time, and you can use it via this token. So how are you giving the token to the individuals that I'm assuming purchase this, and then they have access to it, and it expires over that 5 hours? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So, there are kind of 5 layers of utility with the NFT. So, clearly the most obvious one is you have 5 hours of time that you can use within the course of a calendar year with the expert, right? So that's the simplest utility. The second layer of utility is anything that happens in those 5 hours, those conversations, you can further tokenize that. So that's the second level. And if there is intellectual property, IP, then both parties actually will co-own, right? And that's,
Hmm.
the whole, the loveliness of being, in that Web3 space is, you really now have provenance of how things can be owned and monetized between parties. The other layer of it is, certainly the buyer gets to now be in a closed community of those 25 industry experts, and we add, so we're bringing out another 100 this year. So now your network, we've now put you into a network of the world's broadest and brightest and smartest that now you have access to at any time. The other layer is all of the work that can be co-created. We created the first augmented reality interaction of someone's wisdom. So think about how you interact with someone's wisdom right now. It's flat on Wikipedia or it's flat on LinkedIn. So you can walk around, if you go on the lovelyhumans.io website, you can walk around a room and you can see bodies of work. And, the roadmap is now you can touch it and it will open up and you can interact with bodies of work of the individual. And of course, clearly the basic level of the NFT is I bought the artwork. So we got this incredible local artist, Sallyann, who did the artwork, and the artwork changes as you consume the NFT. But we have like all of
That's
these
great.
nuances. So it's a living NFT. It's a living utility that gives real tangible value. And I think this is what we will see in the space, right? As, kind of, end of 2022, the last quarter was like, all hell broke loose in the NFT world. I think what it did is it allowed the room for truly utility-based NFTs with real value to kind of surface up.
That's fantastic. No, that's definitely far more nuanced than I thought. So that's great. Thank you for going through that. Um, Out of curiosity, which blockchain are you working with? Is it kind of on the open-ended side, or is there one in particular?
Yeah. So on our first drop, we chose the easy route and we did it just through OpenSea. Um,
Okay.
uh, and the reason we did that, we decided to do the drop and we did it all within 30 days, Joseph.
Wow.
So we did a fast build and we were just like, you know what? Let's not build our own marketplace and sit on Polygon or we can white label our own blockchain. Let's go on something that not only are we introducing a brand new type of NFT, but we also don't want to have people, kind of swim against a barrier, explaining to them that we're on, our own blockchain, for example, or, we're doing, so we did it super simple, kind of like, Gary Vee and friends, right?
Yes.
Super simple, kept it really basic. This year, our second drop, we're going to probably do the same. And then we are going to make a decision after the second drop, which is the end of the first quarter. Do we do our own marketplace? Do we, sit on Polygon? Do we white label our own blockchain? So these are all the decisions I think any business will have to make when you have product market fit. So you don't want to go spend tons of money building out, all of this stuff. It's a different type of developer that you need, right? Than your core team. So you need Solidity developers. You need, there are ways you can just dab your toe in and make sure you have a product market fit, which is what we did, and then be able to go, okay, now I'm going to go explore now the whole world of this, marketplaces and blockchain and all of those things.
Very wise. It makes a lot of sense because it can get extraordinarily nuanced and complicated pretty quickly. So I respect what you're doing there. That makes a lot of sense. So if we take a step back a little bit, what led you down this path?
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things that, if you January last year, this time, I didn't even really know what NFTs and metaverse and all of those things truly were. I mean, I'm being very frank with you. I'm generally a very curious person, so my pulse is something is happening. And I went to my first NFT conference, and one of the ways I get comfortable with something is I teach it. So I actually invited a speaker on NFTs and metaverse in January, and then did it again to our entire learning community. Remember, I have a community and we have a learning platform, and and then I think it was about February or March that all of these NFT conferences started happening. So kind of like the one you're coming out to, and I went to a couple of them and I was just sitting and observing what was happening around the room. And I as a startup, we're about to go do a Series A raise this year. And I remember talking to my group of investors, and they all said to me last year, they're like, why don't you do it now? Because the market is going to shift completely when it comes to edutech. And there were all of these signals that said to me, the sector that you're in is going to take a nosedive. There is this new sector that is emerging, that is low-hanging fruit. So I did a raise, Joseph, on, it just dawned on me, I can tokenize time with my industry experts. They all immediately, I mean, most 40, 50, and 60-year-olds, you tell them they can be an NFT, they're so excited to go tell their kids and their grandkids.
That's right.
Everybody was like, there was a lineup waiting, going, we want to be, in the first drop of the NFTs. I did a raise in a week, Joseph. That's how
Wow.
easy it was. In 1 week, I closed a raise to enter into Web3. I mean, clearly, I have a lot of relationships in terms of, that's one of the things I do very well. Did the raise, hired the team to be able to market and build out this NFT in the month of July.
Oh my
We built,
goodness.
I'm not kidding you, we built the entire thing in August, went to market, we dropped October 15, the drop. So this happened completely overnight. And, a couple of things happened immediately. One, the customers that we could not normally get into in our traditional Web2 business were now all coming to us. And even though they still wanted our core Web2 product, now the door opened up as a top of the funnel because of this Web3 space. All of a sudden, all the biggest companies in the world were like, what is this that you just did? Right? Because most of them are looking at their NFT strategy, right? And kind of going, what do I do? Right. So that was interesting. Second thing that happened is, our collection, I can't announce yet who bought the collection. I will be able to very soon, but it was sold out, the collection, within, 30 days, 45 days.
Wow.
Normally it takes
Congratulations.
3 to 6 months to sell out our Web2. And the only reason I can't say who it is, it's a government body,
Okay.
and they're setting up their wallets, and there is all of these things that need to happen. So we're also learning, and this is, for all of your viewers, of where big corporates, publicly traded companies, and governments who have never entered in the space are looking at it going, we will buy an NFT collection with the right utility, right?
Amazing.
And now they're entering into, okay, well, we don't have a wallet. We're a government. Like, how does a government set up a wallet? What are the compliance? So it's a big first for us on many of the things that's happening.
No, I mean, what you just identified are so many different aspects to this that I think most people are still grappling with and trying to understand, but it really takes individuals and organizations to walk through the paces to get an understanding of that. You can teach people like, oh, this is what you're going to need to do. You need to get your wallets. Of course, you need to have your private key and make sure that's held tight.
Yeah,
And maybe it's
yeah,
a
yeah. But what
multi-sig wallet.
happens?
Yes.
Yeah. What happens if that's a publicly traded company? What happens if that's a government? Right?
Exactly.
Like, we
I mean,
think that's really easy. You're going, but governments don't have a wallet. There's all these security things. There's all of these compliance. It's not in their documents. What are the regulations? Do they have to put out RFPs? There's all of these things that, we're walking through for the first time going, okay, it's not just send me a wire transfer. And I'll give you, right? Because you want it to be a legitimate Web3 transaction, right?
right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's been interesting, Joseph, but in a very positive way, because you do the first one and now you've set the template for how this looks and feels for everybody else.
Do you feel like you've gone through that entire path at this point in time? So you feel like confident? Or are you still working through it right now?
So I think that, the big parts have been worked through, right? So, for me to confidently say, my collection is sold out. Now it's just the nitty gritty of, dotting the I's and the P and actually getting the wallet address to do the official transfer of it. But I mean, yeah, lawyers and CF finance people and everyone is sitting there going, okay, well, how is this going to happen? Right. And you have to sit there and go, how is this going to happen? Right. Because any NFT website you go to, it just says very simply, you can set up a wallet, but think who those buyers are. Those buyers are not corporate buyers. right? This is a
So true.
B2B, this is a complete B2B NFT transaction.
Do you think that most organizations will soon have a crypto platform, donation platform, whatever the case is?
I think they will, but you have to remember, right? So most corporations, particularly those that are public or government entities, they have to fall under central banks. If their central banks are not recognizing yet, because that's the thing, right? They're not
Right.
recognizing crypto. Is this some kind of off the books type of transaction that is happening for them? Um, uh, there are all of these things. Some central banks in the world right now. One of our NFTs is actually guiding the central bank of Cambodia
Hmm.
on their strategy, right? So it's so new, the technology. It reminds me of, I used to be a chief curator of people for Kareem, the ride hailing app that was acquired by Uber for 3.1 billion. And Joseph, I can tell you of when, in 2016, I had gone to Egypt. The offices were just getting opened up there, and the driver got arrested because ride hailing was not legal
Oh
yet.
my goodness.
Right. So I want you to
Right.
think about that, right? Of us, how we used to book. It was illegal. Like literally my driver got arrested. I was like, oh my God. Like God, an Uber could not go into the airport, right? And that's just right there. And think about ride hailing, how much it's part of our lives
Right.
today, but pioneering those frontiers of, so it's the same thing right now of corporates having crypto wallets and having you're pioneering, you're like the first, right, going in. It's like the Wild West going, okay, how is this going to look? I'm sure a couple years from now we will chuckle at it, because I think a couple years from now we'll be able to just go into our regular bank accounts anywhere, and we will have our crypto wallets, we'll have our regular bank accounts, our cards can, I think everything will be interoperable very shortly, but as of right now, it's not yet.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with you. I'm curious to see how far down that road or rabbit hole you may be able to go, or people in general. Do you believe that self-sovereign identity is something that will take off, or do you think that we'll probably fall short of that because we're going to still need to rely on the old systems?
I don't think, I think for many of us, we have the conversation of it being a all or nothing, right? That zero sum game. And I don't think it ever is, right? It's kind of like, the conversation about humans or AI, right? And we
Yes.
make it an or, and we don't make it an and conversation. And I think it's the same thing here. It's an and conversation. I mean, clearly, traditional banks, banking and pharmaceuticals are the most regulated sectors in the world. They have always been, right? So you trying to interrupt, the most highly regulated, kind of sector, I mean, you're going to drag them by their hair, right? No question about it. You're going to drag them. However, there is not a single bank out there, and I can tell you that, just based on our experience and who's coming, that is not having conversations about what is our branch in the sandbox going to look like? When or how do we keep and engage our customers and not lose them to fintechs and alternative, right? That's happening right now. It might take them maybe a year or two. Many of them are looking and going, okay, well, maybe we can't do it under our traditional structures, but we can do a digital version of our bank that might give us a little more leeway. So, to answer your question, I do think it's going to happen, and it's going to be an and conversation. I don't think traditional, banking as it is going to disappear.
Well articulated. It's one of those things that I've sort of gone back and forth with many times, and having been in this space for quite some time, it's like one of those things that you contemplate, like, all right, well, the future could be, because it's a reaction to Web 2 and Google and Facebook, well, great companies, but the ownership of data is not yours, right? So if
Yeah,
people were to go in this other direction, which is like, I own all of my data, I can release it, I can expunge it if I need to from these
yeah,
locations, through zero knowledge proofs or whatever the case is, whatever it makes it easy for people to sort of retain, own, and if they want to monetize that, that's fantastic. But you're right. I mean, those large organizations are probably going to be here going forward, unless you're maybe a Google and we're worried about what's going to happen to them over the next several years with ChatGPT and all the other ones that are coming out, even though they have their version of the same sort of thing. Um,
yeah. And
Yeah.
you have to think about data also, right? Uh, for the first time in history in 2016, the over 60-year-olds outnumber the under 5-year-olds. And over 60-year-olds or even over 50-year-olds, Joseph, they're perfectly fine with that not owning their data because they don't actually know how to monetize that data. Not many of them are interested. I'm going to be very frank with you. We're
So
talking
true.
about, a particular generation. And yes, I know there is wealth, in the, let's say, 30 and below generation. But, this whole transformation is happening. The majority of the wealth is still in the hands of millennials or millennials plus. And they're not really interested in owning all of their data and monetizing all of their data. Many of them don't even know what is the first thing. I had a bank the other day come to me and say, we want to get our boomer population. And I think boomers might be what, 60 or 65 and above. I'm not
I think
really
so.
sure.
Yes. Yeah. 65
We
and
want
above.
to we want to get our our boomer population, because that's our wealthiest client base, into the sandbox. Can you help us do that? And can you create a bridge, and make NFTs and financial literacy so that they will actually go into the sandbox? So I think, Joseph, it's not a data issue for that population. It's more of, as a business, we also have to have, I always say it's a channel of distribution. Just how way back you would have an app and you would have a desktop and you would have, now it's just going to be another channel of distribution, your whatever you have in Web3. And how do I get my core, group to be able to fluidly go back and forth within that?
Amazing. No, I think you're right about that. Totally. All right. Maybe one of the last questions I have, I'd love to hear your impressions and opinions on DAOs and how they fit into all of this.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of hype about, DAOs and, the ability to be, I mean, really, it's an inclusion piece, right? Everyone's at the table and everybody, gets a say. But the reality, the reality is that not a lot gets accomplished when everybody has a say in everything, right? So I think DAOs work well when it's very limited in scope of what the DAO is going to, those who are members of the DAO will be able to have a say in. I do not think core operations, and I say this, wholeheartedly, I'm a big believer, my whole product is inclusion, right? But I don't think that core business operations can be managed and run by a DAO. Nothing will ever get done.
I totally agree with you. It's got to be. There's a piece that I wrote probably a year and a half ago about how a law firm that wanted to have partnership could leverage a DAO. But if you think about it, you're right. Operations, daily operations. Let's pretend you had 100 attorneys,
Yeah.
and they're all voting on things or suggesting ideas, and they all have the ability to vote on it. It's got to move extraordinarily slowly, and while there might be clarity into what's happening, which is one of the best parts of this, it's just probably too onerous a process.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
early days.
Yeah, and as I said to you, all of this, everyone is stress testing. I often say to people that, it's choice architecture sometimes. Even within the DAO, just having a say in everything means people actually hesitate and don't act, right? So if it's like going to a buffet, we don't go to a buffet every single day, right? Like, right? Every once in a while. So if there are one or two or three things that are very specific, that is DAO controlled, actually that can be very, very effective. But a DAO into the full flow of how something operates, the science actually is very clear, right? Our brain can only handle 3 to 5 things. More than that, we immediately stop. It's lovely, all the selection, but we don't actually make decisions when there's just too many things in front of us. So I think, when you look at that science of, a DAO being everything to everyone, I think it ends up being nothing to anyone. But I do agree that there are certain things that, that inclusion can be very helpful. And in terms of the transparency requires maturity, Joseph. I
Yes.
remember when I was at, one of my unicorns, I had the founders come to me and say, I would like to make public everybody's salaries.
Ay,
And
ay, ay.
I knew my workforce. And I said, no, you're the workforce, we had 500 plus. I'm like, they are not mature enough to actually see each other's salary, right? Particularly where you have scenarios where you really had pay unequal. And the pay unequal was based on, that really simple, 80-20 Pareto's rule that, 20% was really pulling everything up. And they were compensating that way.
Mhm.
But there was 80% that was not. And I said, we could not make that public. I said, all hell would break loose with all of this transparency.
Oh my goodness. I think anyway, I don't know, while it is maturity in some respect, I just don't know any group that would ever. I've always thought that'd be amazing to have total clarity of what everyone makes around me, but ultimately, I think it's a bad thing.
And it's, what, it's human nuance, right?
Yeah,
And any company, I don't care, who you are, whether you're the Googles of the world or whether every company has a top tail and a bottom tail, and that is never more than 10 to 20%. Everybody else falls in between that. And that 10 or 20%, there's the 10 at the bottom that basically they contribute zero. And then there is that 10 or 20 at the top that is driving the entire company.
right.
And then the rest falls in the middle. And the rest that falls in the middle, you can do leveling and you can do, all the traditional things of, but that 20%, like if they should be making 10x more and 20x more because they're driving the business, they should be earning that amount. And let me tell you, when others find out about that, they're not okay with it. They're not okay with it.
No, no, not at all. You know what? I just thought of one last thing that I'd love to bring up because I always get excited these things, but you have a patent pending. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. It's I'm super proud about that.
As you should be. That's
And I
fantastic.
always, and I always share that because, and I share it as a female, because there are, we're 50% of the population and women come up with all kinds of creative stuff all the time. And there's less than 4%
Oh,
of patents where women are sole inventors. There's only about 13 or 14% where women are co-inventors, such a tiny number. And what it is I would like to share about, in terms of that is filing a patent in terms of ingenuity is such an easy thing, not costly at all.
mm,
My patent is based on my data lake. So everything that we do at GLEAC, we're building one of the largest. So ChatGPT is actually really important to my work. We're building the largest data lake of how humans apply human ingenuity and wisdom in core soft skills in workplace situations. So now I get to measure it up against ChatGPT, and I can actually tell you how humans handle things different compared to ChatGPT. And
wild.
my patent is about how do you train agents or AI on how humans act in situations.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing. My
yeah.
goodness. Well, best of luck with it. I always thought that the patent process was a lot more complicated. You need tons of attorneys helping you out with
No,
it.
you
Uh,
don't. You
no?
don't. You
Okay.
really don't. And we have an NFT that's won. Her name is Janan George. She's one of the best in the world on it. And what she the process is super simple, very easy to file, not very costly. So when people say to you, "Oh, I've spent hundreds of thousands of patents," unless they're litigating a patent, patents filings, they're under $10,000. Right? Not expensive at all. And what I love about this particular NFT, Janan, is she built technology. So it's one of those lawyers that built technology where you can see heat maps of all the patents being filed in the US. So you can see families of all the technology coming out from Microsoft and IBM and everyone else. So she keeps an eye on all the patents she filed where there might be opportunities for founders going, okay, IBM has something that you have. Let's go talk to them. Or so pretty cool. Very, very cool.
That definitely is, my goodness. And the PTO office is a stone's throw away from where I am right now. So
Yeah,
it's amazing.
yeah, yeah. Where
Well,
are
so
you right now, Joseph?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
You're in DC. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Very cool. Well, Joseph, thank you. Is there anything else I can share with your
No,
audience?
this has been fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring up?
I think the only thing I would love to share with everyone in terms of the space, particularly business users, would be and Gleek and Lovely Humans is an example, right? I all of this that's happening in the space will impact your business directly or indirectly. And the ability to run experiments, and this started as an experiment and turned out that we did get product market fit, to be able to go, this can actually be a core part of the business. So I would say running these experiments, and there's so many tools out there to do it in a very safe way, but it's worth your while exploring this space just as a regular distribution channel, because it might open up doors to your traditional business that you had to take longer to get it opened. So, that's what I would say on that note, Joseph.
Fantastic. My goodness. Well, we'll leave it there. Sallyann, thank you so much for taking your time to go through this today. It really shows where people can go in this direction, and taking a little bit of risk, a little bit of adventure with there, and you're very
Yeah.
innovative. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, Joseph. Thank you for having me.
All right, wonderful. Take care. Bye-bye.